Well, here we go, continuing our look at the rise of the machines, part 3. And now we're looking at new ideas and ideologies with our overarching question: what motivated the new philosophies of the industrial age, and how did these isms affect society?
Isms, in my opinion, are not good. A person should not believe in an ism. He should believe in himself. I quote John Lennon, "I don't believe in Beatles, I just believe in me." A good point there. After all, he was the walrus.
Now, to begin with, we can look at certain industrial theorists, such as Adam Smith, who obviously promoted capitalism. In 1776, he wrote The Wealth of Nations, which condemned mercantilism. And as you should recall, he talked about the laws of supply and demand. And he spoke about an invisible hand that would establish an equilibrium in prices. According to Smith, capitalism promoted the free market system, in which free enterprise and laissez-faire would provide the best system for the most people. Now, looking at another industrial theorist, we look at Thomas Malthus, who wrote an essay on the principle of population in 1798. Now, Malthus contended that food grew arithmetically or linearly. However, he contended that people reproduced geometrically or exponentially, doubling the population each generation. Now, because of these mathematical principles, despite natural checks on the population or other checks on populations such as wars or famines, epidemics, you would always have overpopulation. Essentially, population growth would continually outpace the resources that were available. Now, combine these ideas to those of David Ricardo's, who talked about the iron law of wages. Even though he wasn't the first to propose this, it states that wages cannot fall below subsistence wage levels because without subsistence, laborers would be unable to work, basically be unable to live. However, competition among laborers for employment would drive wages down to the minimal level. So, a simple way to remember is saying, as population will grow, wages remain low. Ricardo noted this prediction would not come true as long as a new investment, technology, or some other factor caused the demand for labor to increase faster than population grew. But if Malthus was right, then the future would indeed be gloomy. Much like Smith and Malthus, he believed in free enterprise and laissez-faire. Predicting that you would always have poverty no matter what you tried really turned economics into what people called the dismal science. So, to encapsulate these ideas, we look at classical liberalism, which is often referred to as libertarianism or sometimes conservatism. Now, this system advocates civil liberties and political freedom with limited government under the rule of law and emphasizes economic freedom. It had its roots in the Enlightenment, which promoted individual liberties such as life, liberty, and property, as well as career advancement based on talent and not based on birth. Classical liberalism also advocated free market capitalism, competition, laissez-faire, the invisible hand, and was inherently anti-authoritarian. However, the excess greed that sometimes accompanied the capitalist world brought forth utilitarianism, which held that the proper course of action is the one that maximizes utility, specifically defined as maximizing happiness and reducing suffering. Jeremy Bentham is considered the founder of modern utilitarianism. He advocated the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Happiness, according to Bentham, was a predominance of pleasure over pain. Now, another great utilitarian of the time was John Stuart Mill, who was a student of Bentham's. He added to the basic philosophy that there is a difference between happiness and contentment. He wrote, "It is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Better Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied." Mill, like Bentham, supported capitalism and laissez-faire, but suggested the government could intervene if it was to protect civil liberties. Now, as a result of utilitarianism and other individuals, some early reforms were brought in the 1830s and 1840s. Laws were passed that reduced the workday to 10 hours, and child labor laws were enacted. Additionally, labor unions, which was essentially organized labor, were legalized, and they were also allowed to go on strike. Through collective bargaining, many of these unions negotiated for higher wages and better working conditions, amongst other things. Now, going even further than utilitarianism was Utopian Socialism, which gets its name from Thomas More's Utopia, written back in 1516, which quite literally means no place. He wrote about a fictitious island in the Atlantic, in which you had a good environment where people ceased to act selfishly, where greed was replaced with a sense of community. Now, a renowned utopian socialist was Count Henri de Saint-Simon. He suggested that industrialization, aided by science, would bring a wondrous new age to Europe and essentially the world. He proposed a technocratic socialism where proper social organization would require the parasites, or people he called the court, the aristocracy, lawyers, and churchmen, to give way to the doers, or scientists, engineers, and industrialists. And this would lead toward a community based on cooperation, not competition. Now, Robert Owen was somebody who pushed against child labor, he encouraged unions, and was a true founder of utopian socialism. He's perhaps most famous for establishing New Lanark, which was a model village in Scotland. On this village, he ran a factory and also established homes for the workers, he had a school for the children, and he actually even made a profit. It had been thought by most industrialists that providing these benefits to the workers would basically bankrupt the company. No matter what your philosophy or political persuasion, it is very true that these isms certainly made the world more interesting.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.